Well, good morning, Freedom Life Church. We're so excited to have you here with us today. If you haven't noticed, my parents, Pastor and Miss Pam, are not here today. They are enjoying the weekend with my older brother and his wife and their other grandkids. They actually took my youngest with them. And so he spent the weekend in Arkansas, and they've had a great time together, went to church with them this morning, and we'll head back this afternoon. But we're thankful that we have a team here at Freedom Life that they're able to go and do that, enjoy grandparent season, right? I'm so grateful that they can. But I'm honored to have the opportunity to share with you today. And this is something that I don't ever take lightly. And I think the older I get, the probably more understanding I have of the weight that it carries to really share the gospel with the people of God. And so I always want you to know that this is such an honor for me to get to do this with you guys. I'm going to talk to you today about being built for more than a moment. We are built for more than a moment. One moment is not all that we're supposed to have to build our faith on. But in that same vein, who can remember maybe a moment that you've had with God? If you've been a Christian for any amount of time, I'm sure you can think back to a moment in your life that you have been dramatically impacted by an encounter that you've had with God. Whether it was at the altar in a worship service, maybe with some special guest speakers that you responded to an altar call, maybe your salvation moment when you asked Jesus to be your Savior. Maybe at a camp when you were a kid or a teenager that you went and were a part of a youth camp or even a conference as an adult. But there's this moment that you encountered God in such a real way and you were like, man, this is awesome. Is this what it's going to be like forever? And then this thing happens where you leave, and sometimes maybe it's just a couple hours later, maybe sometimes days, maybe even weeks or months, but eventually these same feelings that you came and brought to the altar of maybe being overwhelmed, anxious, fearful, worried, depressed, creep back in. I think it's safe to say that all of us in this room have probably experienced that on some level. We have this encounter with Jesus, we have this moment with God, and they are amazing. But that is not what is meant to sustain you for longevity in your walk with God. It has to be built on more than just the one moment. More has to go into it, right? Because we've had real moments, but those are not what sustain us long term. Because God isn't just about giving experiences. He's building something within us for every moment that we have. Some moments are awesome, and some moments are really hard. And we're going to talk a little bit about both of those today. In this season of life, I would say that I've been in a building season for a long time. Whether it's been building a strong marriage, Stephen and I will celebrate 17 years of marriage in just a couple of months. Building a family, having children, walking through the getting pregnant and getting my babies here in my arms, right? Raising a family. Building my health, figuring out how to get healthy, how to make better choices. All of these things. Building a church alongside my parents here, serving under them for almost 2 decades. Of being here, building the church. We started Freedom Life Academy, our school, about 4 years ago. We've been building a school. And then even in the natural, we built a house. We built a home a few years ago during the pandemic of COVID, which kind of worked to our favor in the sense that we had a lot of time that we could be present to build it ourselves. It was real fun. No, it really was incredible. But let me tell you something. I didn't know a lot about construction. I mean, my dad has always been a little involved in construction, but let's be honest, it's not something that I just did on the regular. But I learned a lot through the process, right? So when we began to build our house on the piece of property that we were going to do, or we got our property, I guess we weren't even building yet. It really looked just like a big wooded area, okay? We're building next door to my parents. And I love it. I love living next to my parents. It's awesome. But it was just a bunch of trees, okay? And it was like a hill. And no one had built here or bought this land because they couldn't envision how to build here. But thank God, he gave my parents the ability to see how to build a house in an area like that. Well, he also gave them vision in a lot of areas. I'm thankful they had it for this. My dad used to be a logger, so he went in and he cut down all the trees. And they brought in this big old track hoe, and we dug up all the stumps, and we pulled roots. And I mean, this probably took a solid month of just getting the trees out, digging the stumps, pulling the roots. And like, we were doing this ourselves. Got lots of pictures of my kids when they were little in these big old holes in our property, right? From digging all this stuff out. So then Dad rents this big track hoe, and he comes in and he's moving dirt and packing dirt for probably another solid month. So we're 2 months into this thing, and still all you can see is dirt. Nothing but a bunch of dirt. Okay, so then, because it's like where the property is and all this stuff, they have to come test the soil and do all these special things that I didn't know were such a big deal, right? But they come and they tell us we need to put these things in the ground that I'd never even heard of before called helical piers. And then we have to pay this crew to come in, and they dig these piers like really far into the ground. Like you can't even see them when they're done. It's like really, it costs a lot of money. And so then they make this whole thing in the ground, right? It looks like a graph on the ground. If you don't know about construction, you should look it up. It looks really cool. But then they run all the rebar, and they run all your plumbing that goes in your foundation, and they run all the electrical that goes in the slab. They run all this stuff, and you can see all these things that are happening. And then the day came that they were going to pour the concrete. And I remember I was so excited. So excited for them to pour the concrete, because that means we're going to actually get to start building the house, right? So they come, they pour the slab, and we come that afternoon, we're looking at it, and our property, like, it's up on a hill, and the house is kind of down. And so I'm standing at the top of it, and I'm standing there next to Stephen, and I'm looking at it, and I say, there's a lot of money in there no one's ever going to see. A lot. But here's the thing. I love my home. And I think it turned out beautiful. And I love to be able to host people and events and showers and parties and FCA and all the things that we do in our home. I love it. But none of that matters if the foundation wasn't strong. Because the foundation matters more than the appearance. Because you see what would have happened the first time the hurricane blew through is my house wouldn't have stood. And then the appearance doesn't matter, right? There's no more home. It's gone. But because we spent the time and the money and the effort in building a strong foundation, when the storms come, I'm not nervous that my house is going to fall. And I'm also really grateful that I know my dad wouldn't have put me in there if he thought it wasn't safe. But we have to remember that the foundation matters more than the appearance. And so what I'm here to tell you today is that what you build in private sustains you in public. No one's ever going to see what's under my slab. But now a lot of you know because I just told you. But what you're doing behind closed doors is going to be what sustains you as you walk out your relationship with God. Are you spending time in prayer, in the Word, in community with other believers? Those are the things that are going to build longevity in your faith and in your spiritual walk. The moment that you have will take you so far, but eventually that's going to wane, and then what are you left with? Because the foundation has to be strong. Private formation prepares you for public moments because you don't rise to the moment, you fall to what you've built. I'm going to say that again. You don't rise to the moment, you fall to what you've built. Here's the reality, we all fall. We're all going to mess up, we're human, it's inevitable. Don't plan not to fail, because we are all going to fail eventually in some way, shape, or form. So where is your foundation? Are you prepared to catch yourself and not fall all the way down into the pit? Have you built a firm foundation? Or when you fall from the tree, are you going to go through? Make sure that you are putting in the things in private, because they're going to prepare you for the public moments. Faith, character, and depth are built in the unseen seasons. I have no doubt that some of the things that Stephen and I endured early in ministry and in our marriage have helped us to be able to navigate some of the things that we've walked through in recent years. I was 19 when we started serving in ministry. I've come a long ways. I still have a lot to learn. But man, in the beginning, let's just be honest, I was just really young and really naive, and sometimes in the best way, but sometimes I needed some people around me. But all of that, it comes with hurt and joy and excitement and pain and all the things along the way, right? But it's what we allow God to do in us through those seasons that will then determine how we walk this out as we continue to grow. So the question isn't, did God show up? Because he never fails. But the question is, what is he building within me? What I can tell you is that in those hard moments, God did not leave you. You were not alone. And you will never be. But what is God building in you through what you're walking through right now? I promise he's got something for you. Number 2 is a powerful moment doesn't mean you are fully built. Just because you experience this amazing high mountaintop moment does not mean that you've arrived. In my opinion, no one ever fully arrives. We're always growing. There is always more room and deeper depths to go in our relationship with Christ. What I can tell you is what the Bible tells me that love is in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to achieve until I'm with Jesus. Now, I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep working it to the best of my ability. But there are some lines in that, whew. I think while I still have a sin nature, it's going to be real hard to always keep in check. And so we have to keep pushing to grow closer and deeper in our walk with God. I'm going to read to you about Elijah out of 1 Kings chapters 18 and 19. I'm going to skip around a little bit, but they have the verses and I'll follow along. But if you want to read all of this, I encourage you to. Go read the story of Elijah in 1 Kings 18 and 19. We're going to start in verse 25. It says, Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first. Since there are so many of you, call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. It's just so funny to me. Then Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. After preparing the altar, he told them to fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. Do it again, he said, and they did it again. Do it a third time, he ordered, and they did it the third time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that if you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. So I'm going to break this down for you a little bit. Elijah is a prophet of God, and there's these other prophets of a false god, Baal, that they're worshiping. There's 450 of them. There's one Elijah, okay? And he's trying to show them, like, there is one true God that you should serve. There's one. And he's like, all right, you don't believe me? Let's just have this whole moment to really just show you that my God is the real God. He's like, look, I'll let you go first. Go for it. You have so many. Go get your bulls. Go get all your stuff. Go prepare your altar. And you call down fire. Don't light it. Call it down. Have your God set it on fire for you. And so they're doing all this. And so after hours of them trying to call down fire, he taunts them. Like, he is so confident that God is going to show up and show out that he's like, hey, your God taking a nap? You need to go wake him up. Like, I just think that's hysterical. He's over here like so confident that God is going to do what he knows he can do, that he's totally messing with these guys. I mean, he's talking trash, right? That's what's happening in this moment. It's this massive public moment. There's 450 prophets of Baal plus thousands of other people watching this whole thing go down. And he is not scared or intimidated or nervous at all. And then, less than 10 verses later, less than 10, like one day later, in 1 Kings chapter 19, it says, now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, and now he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. Less than 10 verses ago, this guy called down fire from heaven in front of thousands of people. A day later, some chick threatens him, and he goes running into the woods, crawls under a tree and says, God, just kill me now. Like, how dramatic. Like, what a shift, right? What a shift. He went from this mountaintop moment to all of a sudden he's afraid, he's running, and he isolated himself from everyone and everything that was good around him. But here's what's really cool. Struggling does not mean that you are failing. It does not mean that you're failing. Not every emotional struggle is a spiritual battle. Just because your emotions are out of whack doesn't mean you're failing God. It means you need to do some work. It means you need to probably ask some people to come around you. It means you need to spend some time with God. But one of the biggest tools of the enemy is that he wants us to isolate ourselves from everyone and everything that can help bring value and stability in our lives. You know, some of my introverted friends in the room, you're like, I need to be by myself. That is how I refuel. That is what gives me energy. That is what helps me go. And that is fine. There is space and a place for that. I mean isolation in the sense of like you're cutting everyone off, choosing to just like be in a dark room all the time by yourself. That's not wise. No matter how much of an introvert you are, when you go refuel by being alone, you should be going to sit with the Lord. That's what's going to give you the energy that you need to keep fighting. If moments aren't enough, then what actually sustains us? Because you can love God deeply and still feel overwhelmed. Can everybody take a deep sigh of relief? Like, thank God. I love God deeply. But just like 2 days ago, I had a feeling of being overwhelmed, that I had to get some friends to rally around and just pray for me. Because it happens. But that's why we need community. But what actually sustains us is what God builds in us. So number 3 is God builds what will sustain you. So we're going to read a little bit more about Elijah's story. In 1 Kings 19, starting in the second half of verse 5, it says, all at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him again and said, get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. Here's what I want to show you through this passage that I think is so cool, is that God meets you with care, not condemnation. God didn't show up with Elijah in this moment where he literally was like, I just brought down fire from heaven by calling on God, and now this woman threatened me and I'm scared to death, and so just kill me, God. Like, God didn't just come and say, bro, look what I did for you yesterday. Get it together. Come on. Like, don't you see what just happened? Like, why are you acting like this? He didn't come and like give him a spanking and make him, get up and feel bad about what he was doing. Because here's what I need you to know is that condemnation and shame are from the enemy. The Holy Spirit brings conviction, but that is different. That is different than condemnation. God came in this moment and he met Elijah with care. He brought food. He literally woke him up with an angel and said, hey, bro, look, I already got the food cooked for you. It says it's there over hot coals. Like, he didn't have to do no work for it. He just said, look, you said you're about to die, so I'm going to give you what you need. Here's your food. Here's your water. Now go back to sleep. And then he wakes him up again and says, eat some more. That's not enough to sustain you. But if you'll eat what I've prepared, it will be enough to sustain you for 40 days and 40 nights. I don't know about you, but I need to eat every couple hours. His meal sustained him. I would say that's a supernatural kind of meal, right? God met him with food, with rest, and most importantly, with presence. The presence of God was there with him. In this moment, he didn't come in and make him feel ashamed. He didn't make him feel condemned. He said, I love you. I care about you. And we're going to get through this together. Because God strengthens most often before he speaks. Before God gives you the next step, he's going to give you the strength that you need to walk it out. He gave Elijah what he needed, and then he sent him on the way. He gave him the sustenance that he needed to equip him to fulfill what he was called to do. And the next thing that God does in helping build what will sustain you is he helps you, if you will, to create rhythms or habits and relationships that will help you navigate this road together. You need rhythms and you need people. You need rhythms and you need people. I went through something a few years ago that I'd really never experienced before. And there was this moment, and, I think a lot of people have struggled with anxiety or fear or depression or all these feelings that can come over us and feel really overwhelming, right? And so I'd never really been one who really struggled with those specific types of things. I got my own issues. Don't we all, right? But a few years ago, I was just walking through some hard things, and I remember there was this moment that I was at home all by myself, and which is rare. But I was, and I know all my kids were at practices. Stephen was coaching one of them, so he was with one of them, and the other two were at their perspective practices this afternoon. And I had I want to say maybe just 2 hours at home by myself before I had to go to the next thing I was a part of that day. This was not a normal occurrence, but I'd already been kind of going through some stuff and navigating some things that were difficult, and I think I was kind of already at the pinnacle of almost a breaking point, so to speak, in my emotions. And I got this phone call, and someone tells me something, and I just remember when I hung up, I just felt this overwhelming frustration, anxiety, panic, and my chest began to tighten, and I began to just have a hard time breathing. And I was crying so hard that I just couldn't even catch my breath. I would really say, looking back, that I was wailing. It was very intense. And I knew all the right things to do. I knew the truth of the Word of God. I knew that God could bring me out of this moment. And so I turned on my TV, I went to my Spotify and turned on worship and turned it up as loud as I could. I mean, it's home by myself, right? I pulled up my phone and pulled up scriptures and prayers on anxiety and start praying through and speaking those things out over myself, because I know the Word. I know what I need to do. But in this moment, it was like nothing was helping it break. And so I had put good habits and rhythms in place in my life. But for this situation, I needed people. I needed more than just that in the moment. I needed the community that God had put around me. And so I knew Stephen he was reachable, but it would probably take him, 20 to 30 minutes to get home to me. I knew I needed someone quick. Like I mentioned earlier, my parents lived next door. I knew my dad was home. My mom was at life group. I knew my dad was home. And so I sent my dad a text after I realized that and it was getting worse. I almost felt like I was going to faint. I just could not catch my breath. I texted my dad and I said, "Are you home?" And I was pretty sure he was. And he said yes. And I said, "I need you." And in less than 5 minutes, he was there. And he came in the door, and I know that he could hear me from the door as soon as he entered, because when I tell you I was wailing, it was intense. And he came in my room where I was, and he knelt down in front of me, and he embraced me, and he kissed me on my head, and he said, "I love you." And he started trying to ask me a question, and when he realized I was not in a place that I could actually communicate or articulate what I was feeling, he just began to pray. But the way that he prayed shifted everything in that moment. And it's been a defining moment in my life now of how I navigate situations like this moving forward. And so he began to pray all the things that he was thankful for. He didn't start praying against what I was feeling and just speaking over the attack that I was having. He started praying over all the things that we have to be thankful for. God, I thank you for Tori. I thank you for our church. I thank you for our family. I thank you for our school. I thank you for our relationship. I thank you for just all these things to be thankful for, right? And then he began to pray for the people who had truly hurt me. He began to call them by name and speak life over them and health over them and freedom over them, protection over them. And when I tell you everything shifted, immediately I could start catching my breath. Immediately I start to calm down. Because you see, anxiety and thankfulness cannot coexist. They cannot live together. And so when we begin to thank God for all that we have in our lives, instead of seeing the circumstance for what it is, the Bible teaches us, speak those things that be not as though they were. So even though in the moment it doesn't feel like you're being honest, We have to speak those things out in faith. And if we can turn our attention to from what is difficult into what we are thankful for, we can't stay in that place. It was a defining moment for me. It built something in me on how to sustain not having to go back to that place again. And I'm grateful to say that while the enemy has tried to hit me in those places again, I immediately start thanking God for the things in my life and praying for the people who are coming against me in the natural. And immediately those feelings leave and that pressure off my chest literally lifts. It built something in me that day. It shifted my perspective. It taught me to dig deeper in a way that I didn't know how to before. So where are you in your walk? Maybe you're like me and you knew the truth. I knew what to do. But in this moment, I also needed support. And here's what my dad did that day. He came in. He came close to me. He hugged me. He kissed me on my head. He prayed over me. He prayed with me. He prayed for me. And all of that shifted the perspective of what I was navigating. And I'm not here to say that like I left that day and all was better and like hunky-dory, we're great. No, it was still hard. I still had to battle. I still had to fight. I still had to choose to walk in forgiveness and in love and all those things, right? Because it's not over. I just have now a really amazing new tool in my belt that as I navigate all of this, I can do it better because he just built something in me that's going to sustain me. It wasn't just a moment. I didn't just need the truth in that moment. I needed someone to stand with me. I needed truth, but I also needed someone. As I was studying for this message, I was reading some excerpts from the book Out of the Cave by Chris Hodges. And there's an excerpt in there and it says this: investing in relationships is always important. Not every relationship, but the ones that are integral to who God has called us to be and where he has placed us. We need to invest ourselves as much as possible in relationships with those who enhance, nourish, encourage, and sustain our lives. Conversely, we need to distance ourselves as much as possible from those who rob us of life. We need relationships in which we can be real with others, who share our faith so we can shoulder one another's burdens and celebrate one another's joys. Relationships are so important. The enemy wants to make you think that you don't need people, and that is not true. You may be like, well, I'm married, I got my mate, that's enough. It's great that you have that, but it's not. You need a community of men around you. Women, you need a community of women around you that you can lean on, depend on, pray with, that are going to challenge you when you're trying to make poor decisions or when you're being tempted to make poor decisions, that are going to call you out and call you up. Those are the relationships that you need to invest in, because they're the ones that are going to take you to deeper levels and help sustain you to have longevity in your walk with Christ. That's what he has for you. That's what he wants for you. Some of you have had these real big moments with God. These mountaintop moments where you've encountered God and you've been so on fire for him and you're living with him, for him, with all that you have inside of you. But then some of you are sitting here today and you're going, I've experienced that. But this season that I'm in right now is an under the bush type of season. I feel like I'm ready to give up on my marriage, on my kid that's not serving God, on my healing, on financial freedom, on freedom from addiction. Whatever it is in your life that you're saying, I'm stuck in this under the bush season. And it feels hopeless and you feel overwhelmed and tired and anxious and fearful and worried and discouraged and exhausted. But what I want you to know is that even through that, it does not mean that you're failing. It does not mean that you are weak. And it does not mean that God is finished with you. He still has more for you. You are not weak because you're having an emotional struggle. You are not weak because you are walking through something hard. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. Stop thinking that you're the only one that's going through everything. Stop thinking that there's nobody out there that can help you or understand. Those are all lies from the enemy to make you continue to try to do this all by yourself, because that's not how God created us. He created us to need relationship and to need one another. The same God who sent fire is the same God who met Elijah in his exhaustion. That is what is so cool to me in this story. Is in the mountaintop moment, Elijah called out to God. He said, God, send fire, and he did it. And in his under the bush moment, he still called out to God. Now he said, God, would you kill me? God didn't do that, but he did bring what he needed: food, rest, and presence. He will bring the fire when he needs to, when you call on him. But he will also meet you in your spiritual depletion, exhaustion, emotional fatigue. He will meet you in those places. He's the same God, and he's there for you through all of it if you will just call on him. He will never leave you. The word tells us that, and we can trust in it. God isn't just trying to give you another moment. He wants to either build or rebuild what will sustain you. That's what he wants to happen in you through what you're walking through. I want you to do something with me. Just close your eyes for a second. This just helps turn off all the distraction. I want you to think about one thing that you're thankful for. Now think about one more. And a third. Think about 3 things that you're thankful for right now. Okay, now open your eyes. I think if any of you are honest, if you were feeling any bit of anxiety or worry or fear, that as you began to focus on the things that you were thankful for, it got even just a little bit better. I think if anybody actually did that exercise, that you would honestly say, I feel a little bit of relief after doing that, because I took my mind off of the circumstance that's difficult, and I chose to focus on what I'm thankful for. And it shifted your perspective to see things in a better way. Because thankfulness and anxiety cannot coexist.